Movement presents The Honest Pod with Karrie Garcia. Join us for honest conversations at the intersection of theology, neuroscience, and story engagement. Whether you're a coach, ministry leader, parent, or someone simply longing to love people more intentionally, we welcome you to the table. This is your invitation to greater honesty, healing, and a journey with God to reclaim your story and live free and fully alive in His love. Let's dive into today's episode.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to the Honest Pod. And we're talking about we're continuing the subject from last week, which are we recovered? How are we, everybody? I know that was heavy. Karrie's talking about forgiveness. Karrie cried. It's a whole thing, right? Like, I get it. And yet, as always, when we have a discussion about a topic, I want to bring in somebody to just kind of real life talk. What is this like for real everyday people? What is this like for someone else's experience outside of my voice? Because the reality is that some of you are really going to relate to me. And then others of you are like, Karrie, I'm not anything like you. And so we want to bring in other voices that have the ability to be able to kind of speak to these topics from their own perspective so that we're more well-rounded in understanding not just a topic, but really connecting with all of, my amazing 11 listeners. So today we have Miss Abby Call on the Honest Pod. This is the first time. Is this the first time you're on the Honest Pod?
Yep, the first time.
Oh, Abby. Okay, guys, let me tell you a little bit about Abby. So Abby actually works for Freedom Movement. She is one of our top coaches. She does one-on-one coaching, story work coaching through our organization. She also helps facilitate the story work groups at our Freedom and Story program. So she does a lot of that. She's hosted several Freedom Academies at her church. And she is just by far a stellar human being. I always tell her, like, you would be the one I would send my kids to if they needed to get like good care, good coaching. That's saying a lot because, I'm very protective of my kids, but Abby, I would send them to you. I would send them to you.
Well, it's an honor to hear that from you. I know when you've said that before, it is a really big deal.
Yes, it is. So here's what we're talking about today. As you already know, we're talking about forgiveness. And when I was going through the list of the different people that I have on for different topics, I was thinking about forgiveness and I'm like, who would I want to have come and share? And it's not like you're like, the guru of forgiveness, writing books on it and stuff. But here's what I know about you and your story. You have had to forgive and release a lot of people in your life that didn't really deserve it, but for your own process and journey, like there had to be a release of that for you to be more free, for you to be able to go like, okay, what does this look like? So I want to start with in your own life, and you don't have to get, you don't have to get like super personal, but unless you want to, but what if I'm looking at forgiveness from like 30,000 feet and I'm offering that to you and I'm going like, what does forgiveness look like in your life? What is something like, what is a story or what is something that comes up in your mind when you first think, where have I had to release? Where have I had to forgive? What does that look like for me? Like even from a 30,000 feet, what comes to mind for you?
Yeah. I mean, I think first of all, it's messy and that it's been really messy and really uncomfortable. My mind also goes to, I was raised in church and grew up in environments where I was taught how important forgiveness was. And I think when I think of it being messy and uncomfortable, there wasn't really space in church for me to be messy with what it looked like to know the process, I think, of forgiveness, which I didn't know then.
Right. What did you know then? What were you believing then?
Yeah. I was believing that it was important to God. I knew that. I knew it mattered in my relationship with Him, but I think the motivation to forgive came out of fear that when I was taught the scriptures, forgive others because God forgives you, it was that if I don't forgive these people in my life that have harmed me, which I think I was very aware of, then God would either punish me or I wouldn't receive his forgiveness.
So did you try to do that? Did you try to forgive?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I remember, and I have this image of me being a little girl with my Bible. I want to say she's like 10,
Mm.
sitting in my bedroom and reading these scriptures that I'm being taught, in Sunday school and children's church. And I'm trying to almost make sense of this verse of like, he's saying forgive 77 times. And I'm like,
Mm.
this is big. And wanting to almost like pray over and over and over and over again, asking God, like, help me to forgive. I so
Mm.
badly wanted that, even just as a 10-year-old.
Yeah. And so here you are, you're praying over and over and over again. I want to forgive. I want to go. And which was a true desire of your heart because there was something in you that knew if I can forgive this, maybe I can be free of this.
Right.
Does
Yeah.
that feel true?
It does feel true. It actually makes me really sad to think of the 10-year-old that actually knew that. And then how that continued on in my life. I would say before, I know it was the beginning of 2020 when I actually entered into doing some of the story work and the work that we do in Freedom Movement. And before that, there's definitely a before and after here.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, leading up to there, which was, I think I was 30 years old. Um, it was that I felt like I was forcing myself, almost telling myself, if I can just believe I've forgiven this person, then maybe I'll actually feel differently towards them. It was
Mm-hmm.
more of a mind thing, I think,
Mm-hmm.
than really a heart
Yeah.
posture.
And even feel differently towards yourself, right? Like there was,
Sure, yeah.
because so much of what was happening in your story was this like, well, it sounds like, there's shame when it's
Mhm.
like, this has happened to me. I can't forgive them. The answer is forgiveness. So let me just forgive. And when you still feel that pain, was there still that sense of like, what's wrong with me then?
Right. It was what was wrong with me, or I must not be a good enough Christian, or maybe I'm not believing, or my faith isn't strong enough, that this isn't working for me. Yeah, it
Mhm.
definitely was shame.
Yeah. And so when you're looking at your story, we're not going to, we don't need to go into the depths of your story, but you don't have a small story,
No.
right? Like you have a lot of things that are justifiable in saying that was evil, that was wrong, that was terrible. And I, sh- I shouldn't have to forgive. Like they were wrong, right? And yet there was this desire for you to want to forgive. Can you tap into what was that desire? Why did you want to forgive outside of knowing that that's what God wanted?
Right. I actually don't. I think the thing that comes to mind first when you ask me that question is I wanted to be free of what I felt bound to. It really was, there was something internally that felt icky. Like it just
Yes.
felt gross. It made me mean. I was cruel, very cruel in
Mm,
relationships. I was passive aggressive. And it was like there's something in me that my heart just doesn't feel good. And I so badly wanted to be outside of being bound by that. But I
mhm,
didn't know how. Yeah.
mm. And then even the 10-year-old who may not have been cruel and mean at that point, like there's a part of her, I'm curious if there's a part of her that maybe forgiveness will be the thing that makes me not be sad and not feel the weight of what's happened to me.
Right. I think at that time it was maybe if I can forgive, God can save me from what felt. I actually felt very dirty and
Mhm.
disgusting. Like it was heavy, even as a
Mm.
10-year-old, not knowing how to make sense of what I felt internally.
Right, right. And when forgiveness didn't come the
Hmm.
way that you might have interpreted it to be, if I can forgive, then I don't feel dirty and I don't feel yucky and I can make sense of all this. When that didn't come the way that you needed, from what you're saying, you doubled down and instead of feeling the yuckiness, you just got mean,
Yeah, got real mean.
got
Yeah, and
real
that
mean.
followed me, yeah, through my adulthood.
Yeah. Okay. So then here you are. You said 2020. You enter into Freedom Movement, and it could have been any organization that was
Sure.
inviting you into something, but it happened to be Freedom Movement. Tell me a little bit about what was different about what you were hearing in that space. Again, not a plug for Freedom Movement, but although you should come, but what felt like a different invitation? Because the words forgiveness we use in Freedom Movement, It's there. It's on the restored, shalom part. What started to shift in you that felt different than all those years of trying so hard to forgive and not getting the release and the relief really that you were desiring? What started to shift in there?
Right. Well, if we go right before I find freedom movement, which, like you said, it's not a plug, it really is just a part of my process and my story of
Mhm.
forgiveness specifically. I remember being, I think, 19 years old, seeing a therapist and telling her how much I hated a family member, like
Mm,
hated this family member. I actually said, if this person dies tomorrow, I don't think I'll be sad.
mm,
And it was the first time I got to be so honest about what was going on internally of like, I need to say this to someone, it needs to come out. And I was scared to know who I could say that to.
mm,
And I remember, this Christian therapist more just holding space for that, but I felt kind of left there. Like it was validated. I had right to feel this way towards this person.
mm,
But I don't think, I think it was between that and then we go to, 10 years later, and I'm sitting in a training with you and I say something about my anger. I don't know what I said, but you said, Abby, you've been angry all your life. And though I kind of like knew that, I had a sense of that, there was something about that day that you said that to me, that it felt real and almost it relieved me a little bit of like, okay, yeah, she's seeing this. And then the other part in that same training, you said forgiveness is almost the last part to the healing process.
mhm,
And for so long, I think I had believed that it was more on the front end of forgiving, or of healing.
mm,
And when you said that and put forgiveness almost in its place of the healing process, it gave me space to almost just be more honest of like, I have been angry all my life. She's
mhm,
right. I was kind of mad at you for saying it, but at the same time, it felt very real and like, okay, I think we can move forward now. And being able to name that, learning that grief was going to be a part of, actually, I need to grieve. I need to be able to say, this is how hard this thing was, and be honest about the pain that had happened to me up to that point. And then know that, like, okay, forgiveness is going to come in this process. And it was between the Lord and I, and then also finding safe spaces where I could be honest about this, safe spaces where I could come and actually grieve, be
mhm,
sad, be angry, be frustrated, be disappointed. I mean, I had rage. I needed spaces where I could scream in pillows, where I could scream out loud if I needed to, and really work through the pain of what it was validated. I had a lot of right to be angry.
mhm.
And I think it was the permission to say, you don't have to forgive right now. In fact, I had a therapist look at me once and say, don't forgive them. And I was like, what the heck? Like, I'm paying this person to tell me, like, you're telling me not to forgive them. And almost I walked away and it was like, is he using the reverse psychology on me? Because for some reason it felt like, well, now that I have permission to not forgive this person, like, I actually like kind of want to move towards that. Like, it was taking the pressure away that this was the demand and requirement of me
Mm,
in order to hold a space with the Lord in relationship. And it was, God is going to be patient with me instead as I
mm,
move through the grief and the naming and however long I need to stay here and feel this. I get permission to that. And then that's going to send me to the hope of there will be forgiveness that will come. That's a part of the
mhm,
process, but it's not first. Those
mm.
things, I think they really did give me permission, I think, to the healing process.
Wow, so good. So I'm assuming this whole process took like what, 3 days or like,
Oh my gosh. Well, when you asked me to do forgiveness, I was like, I mean, you're absolutely right. I'm not the guru on this. It's that I'm in the middle of this. And
always.
yeah, and I think, well, you asking me, I'm like thick in the weighing out what it looks like to forgive someone as I've
Mm,
named pain this just this year, these last few months of, this is really hard. This is messier than I think
mm,
people want it to be, the church wants it to be. It's way more complex. This is
mm,
not a step 1, 2, and 3. I think
mhm,
there are different levels of harm. So, you hurt my feelings yesterday because you said this thing, depending on what it is. I might forgive you and we can move on tomorrow. But
mhm,
there are different levels of harm that I've experienced that I've had to tell myself, you have permission, to work this out for however long that is, And some of it has taken months, some has taken years, and I'm still sitting in some that have been, I would say, since 2020. It's 5 years, that I've been
Mm-hmm.
working through what it means to forgive and be able to release someone. And as I continue to tend to those specific places of harm and those relationships, it is allowing me to look more specifically at how did this person harm me, and it I release almost piece by piece, not an entire like, okay, we're good. I don't know if that makes sense.
Oh, it makes so much sense. And I love what you're saying because, like it's different levels. Like you said, if someone hurts you yesterday, we still hold the process of what I've named, I always say there's 6 steps to healing, name, grieve, repent, gratitude, forgiveness, go. Like that's like the 6 steps, right?
Sure.
And we say that all the time, freedom movement, and all biblically sound, neurologically, we know this scientifically, all of this. However, even with what you just said, someone who hurt your feelings yesterday, there is the naming, you hurt my feelings. There's the
Sure.
grieving, right? Of like, hey, that hurt, that didn't feel good. Right. And like, also, what did I do? Did I have any part in that? Is there a
Yep.
repentance that I need to
Yep.
bring? A gratitude of restoration of like, hey, like, let's come together, and a releasing that can happen with our kids when they get mad at each other. Right. And that we're still going through that cycle and that process, but the wound didn't hit the depths of what you're saying. Like it didn't shatter me. And what some of the stuff that you're talking about, these are like soul wounds, these
Yeah.
are places where your little body is having to hold deeper wounds than just, somebody said something mean to you on a playground, although that can be very painful. So I love that you said that, because I think we think it's supposed to go that fast.
Right.
Like it's supposed to go like, well, okay, I know that this happened to me. I'm grieving it. And so I should be able to forgive it. And I love that you said the piece by piece. I talked about this last week, and that, the forgiveness is like a dimmer switch, and so is the fruit of the Spirit. We think that like all of a sudden we're supposed to step into the fruit of the Spirit. And now we have this fully, blossoming tree with love, joy, peace, patience, all these things. And it's like, no, man, like you got to plant a seed and then it's got to start. You might have
Right.
like just a little bit of the fruit of the Spirit that's growing. Would you say in your life, from where you were at 2020 and where you are today, 2025, almost in 2026, like what would you say the difference in the process? Because we always say this is cyclical, right? Like we have to keep going into the name, grieve, repent, blah blah blah, like the whole thing. Where would you say, like looking back at 2020, how are you different in the dimmer switch of forgiveness? What is that kind of looking like?
Sorry.
That's okay. We can edit that.
Yeah, I know. That's why I said. Yeah, I think as I move forward in process, I notice, let's take patience, for example. I've noticed my capacity to hold a space to be more patient has increased, but very slowly.
Mm-hmm.
My joy, I think this is another one. This one's actually a really big one because I held so much darkness and pain in my story for so long that the glass was always half empty. Always. Like there was no way I could enter into a situation and I can see the negative. I can be critical. Like that was a big part of my anger and resentment and what I held like internally for me when I wasn't able to forgive. And moving towards forgiveness has brought so much joy. And I get to actually see the world, I think, through a different lens, but that's come very like, again, piece by piece. I don't think it was an overnight. I'm happy now. And I feel this joy, which I think was always a tender thing to me because I really struggled with that, where there wasn't place for me to name what was true. To me, I'm like, the joy feels fake. Like, don't give me the positivity to things because you're dismissing what's been true for me for so long. And so joy has been just such a challenging and tender place for me and the Lord to know, like, there's joy that comes in the morning, but it's come from grieving. It's come from we stayed there, for a little while. At least that's been a part of my story. It's what it looked like. And I can say I live in a lot more joy now. over the last 5 years,
Mhm.
it's felt really hard. Sometimes joy didn't always feel so in reach, but I think through forgiveness and through the releasing process, it's allowed my heart to experience more joy,
Mhm.
patience, the kindness and the tenderness. I'm not so cruel these days. I can be, in really dysregulated moments.
Mhm.
But
Same.
I'm quicker to come back, to
Yes.
reflect, to be aware, to see, to name, hey, I'm sorry, and
Mm.
offer that, repentance um, differently than before. And forgiveness has been a really big part of that.
Yeah, it's so huge. And I mean, I have the privilege of knowing you and getting to know you these past 5 years and getting to know you fairly intimately.
Mhm.
We've literally done a lot of work together. And a lot of like intimate work together. But there's something that I've noticed in you, and I'd love for you to speak to this. When we first met you, the hypervigilance of, I cannot trust you. You are dangerous. You're going to hurt me. And you had a lot of data to back up that people in authority hurt you. And I mean, on very deep levels, multiple times. And so, can you talk about what doing this work and releasing those places of forgiveness, what that has done for you relationally with people in your world?
Yeah, man, I laugh when you say that because she feels far away, actually.
Mhm.
It
Who
is
feels far away?
wild. The version of me you're talking about.
Yes. Good. Tell me
Uh,
more.
I love her. She was terrified, to be
Mhm.
harmed and what it meant for her to have eyes on her at all, ever, to get attention. Yeah, at the same time, it's what she was desiring. But to have eyes on her, to be seen in a room, to be told you get to be here, that was threatening. And she was
Mhm.
very hyper vigilant to knowing the room, to knowing faces, to saying like, who in here do I need to be worried about? Where do I hold protection, for
Mhm.
myself to keep myself safe? Yeah, that I don't know. When I think about her, I hold a very tender place in my heart for her because she was isolated, very isolated internally. I think I could have been around a lot of people and, good people. We have a really amazing team and we could be together and I would try and just convince myself like you're safe here. Like
Mhm.
these people aren't going to harm you. And yeah, everything in me was my body was telling me, get out now.
Mhm.
Like you need to run first and go find safety, and it came from a lot of that harm that was not tended to, and it kept
Mhm.
me from relationships. It almost kept me from my job, like what I get to
Mhm.
do now.
Mhm.
I wanted to say no, these people are unsafe, and with you, Karrie, being my leader and someone that I was trusting, to shepherd me. That felt risky for the
Yeah.
spaces that I had been in before, specifically toward church leadership. That's
Mhm.
been a really tender place for me. There was a lot of harm there in the
Mhm.
past, and so coming in, it was a really big risk for me to say, am I going to choose, to show up here and be held and trust, and also not just trust that I'll never be harmed here, but trust that when I experience harm,
Yep.
can I move through that? What will that look like, for me to show up, to speak up, to say, hey, this hurt my feelings, or this, bothered me when this happened. Is this space, like, can I do that here? And less about the space, more about what was going on internally for me. That
Right.
no matter where I find myself, I'm going to experience harm at some point. And what is the risk that I'm willing to take to move through that?
Yes.
That I think has allowed me to be more relationship, and it's
Mhm.
allowed me to say yes to more spaces and to take more risks of maybe I might be harmed here and what will happen next, if I do, and or if I am, and what does that look like? Or even harming others, I think was a big part. I really believed I was dangerous. I
Mhm.
believed for a long time that my power was dangerous.
Mhm.
And it kept me from relationships. And so I think it's allowed me to come closer to community. It's allowed me to partner with church. I mean, when we talk about my church now,
Mhm.
um, it kept me from spaces like that. And a big part of my calling is to do a lot of the work that I get to do now in every space that I'm in and in every relationship that I'm in. And so it kept me from entering into those spaces.
Yeah. So what made you continue to come back? What made you keep coming?
Yeah, the risk that there are people that can actually hold my pain and not judge me and give me space to be messy
Hmm.
and get it wrong and fail and still be seen, loved, and the depth of being known, to have someone have eyes on you, to know your story and say, I will stay and I love you and I'm here. That will keep me coming back every
Hmm.
time and
Hmm.
experiencing that, in God's goodness and seeing his goodness through those relationships, those spaces of connection. That to me is worth the risk all the time.
So what I hear you saying is you were willing to risk because you were what? Why were you willing to risk? Why were you willing to go back in those spaces when historically they've been harmful? Why did you keep showing up in the spaces that we were in? We were showing you that we loved you, but there was something internally driving you to say, I am going to keep risking because I don't want to feel what anymore?
Alone,
Yeah,
isolated,
right.
which was leading me to a lot of despair.
Yes. There was a desperation.
Yeah, I
There
was
was a
desperate.
desperation that this whole like pray forgiveness and just get better is not working.
Right.
And I need something to work and I have to. And this is what I want people to hear is that in these processes of even learning what it means to forgive and going through this process, it takes reps.
Hmm.
You're not just going to imagine it and then it's better. There was multiple times that Abby was like, I'm not coming back tomorrow. Like we'd be at a retreat and she called her husband, like, you're going to need to come get me. And her
Yeah.
husband's like, I'm not coming. I love you, but I think you're fine. Like, it's like, no, I'm not fine, but that, and this is what I want you guys to hear that like you have to tap into the desperation to say, I don't want to feel this anymore. So then I have to risk because here's the deal, Abby, I have failed you. We know this to be true. I have messed up. I have had to apologize. What made it so that you were able to forgive me and stay in relationship with me when historically people hurt you and it was historically hard for you to forgive them? What made the difference in our team and our group for you to be able to say, I receive that and I can move with that? What was the difference?
I mean, when I think about it, it's forgiveness. I think the
Hmm.
power of knowing that I can release people, the power of having myself, like I think through tending to the harm, knowing that I have myself and I have God. I think before there was a threat to be alone and to be isolated. And I think now it's like, sure, yes, the space for us is really good. We have an amazing team with really, really good people. And we've had spaces where we've come to repair, with each
Yes.
other. And I can see that and just logically say, like, this is safe. I can keep coming back here. This is relationship where we offer repair. And I think the other part of it is that I'm not threatened to be isolated and alone in my despair because of what I know through tending to the pain, to those younger versions of me and the relationship I get to have with myself and the relationship I get to have with God, which allows me to enter into relationship with others.
Yes.
Does that
So,
make
so good. And really what I have seen. I mean, the truth is, and this is for all of us, and I said this in last week, that what was broken in relationship has to be healed in relationship. That there's a level of going, I remember the first time that you were upset with me about something or you didn't understand, or, I can't remember the details about it, but I remember you came to me and we talked through it. And then at the end, you were in tears and you said, um, it's not even the stuff that happened that's bothering me or that bothered me. I'm just can't believe we're able to work through it. Like you just had never had someone go, yeah, I really missed you there. Like I really messed up. Like, oh yeah, you're right. I am so sorry. And I'm sorry that I did that. And also what did that bring up in you? Not just I'm sorry, but how did it hurt you? And how did my actions affect you? And you being able to say that and being able to watch that happen, there's something that begins to shift where you are able to go, okay, like I forgive you. Like I can forgive you. And a lot of us aren't going to get that response from some of the people we need, right? Like, so in some of these relationships with me or our group, it has given you the strength, almost like the armor that has guarded you to say, I can do this here because I've gotten the nutrients I need. Do you think that has made that more easier for you? And easier is a tough word, but it's been more reachable for you, attainable for you to go, because I've experienced the nutrients here, I think I can actually start to contemplate what it could be like to release the people I will never get those words from. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
It does make sense. And when you say that, what comes to mind for me is compassion. So a part of the healing process, a part of the tending to allows me to enter into some compassion for myself. And as I extend it to myself, it opens how much capacity I get to offer to others. And I think before I was tending to this trauma, to the pain, my prefrontal cortex, there was no space for it to make sense of this person cannot be a threat. Everyone was a threat to me.
Yes.
Everyone, especially leaders, in the church. Like everyone was scary. And it was like, don't trust anyone. The world is a scary place. And when I began to heal, my prefrontal cortex is able to help me separate, when I experience people in this way, the way we're talking about it, our team and you, it begins to say, no, this person is safe enough. Like this person, you can experience relationship and connection here. And there's goodness happening there. And that comes through knowing the compassion that I can have for others. For you, when you came to me and said, I'm sorry, that this happened. And there's compassion there. I think there's compassion for our humanity.
Yes.
And then that same regard, there are people in my life I don't think I will ever get to say, this is what harmed me when I experienced you in this way.
Yes.
My mother being one of them. Let's say someone who is no longer on this earth.
Right.
It's hard. I think people can have an idea that there's a requirement of someone else in order for you to forgive. And it's more that it's the compassion that moves my heart towards forgiveness as I tend to naming first, grieving, and then moving towards compassion, that I can offer forgiveness towards someone else's humanity, knowing that I'm going to get it wrong in my humanity, and so will they. And there's a level of that. If we don't know the compassion piece, I think it's really hard to offer forgiveness.
Oh, yes. Because here's the reality. We just talked about this last week, which you weren't even on last week. And that's how we always know these conversations are divine. Because I literally said last week that when we operate in these places where we've been in relationship and forgiveness has been able to be engaged through repair and repentance with another person that's safe enough. I love that you said that. That our prefrontal cortex will then override the hijacking of our amygdala.
Right.
And it will start bringing about reasoning and compassion. That's literally the word I said. So amen, sister. And how good is God that he's like, I actually want you to be fully online, because it's not like I want you going, God's not wanting us to go around just going, oh, it's no big deal what you did. That's not what he's saying. What he wants for you is the freedom to have an integrated mind, and an integrated mind, that's a psychological term, but what the Bible talks about integration is shalom. He wants you to have peace. And it opens us up to compassion and empathy when we have a fully functioning brain, because we can think more clearly and see the picture more clearly. Doesn't mean that we don't feel the pain, but we can also operate in compassion. And what you are describing is becoming more Christ-like. There's no way Jesus loved Judas and knew what he was going to do and knew what he did do, and still was like, and I can have compassion for you and love you. And still there's an accountability to your behavior. It's to become Christ-like. And I think it's supernatural. Like, I'm like, in my flesh,
Yeah. Right.
I don't want to forgive you.
Yeah.
I like being mad at you.
Yep.
Feels good in the moment until it's slowly killing me on the inside. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know exactly.
So we're going to end up our time. We're going to end our time together. But I'm curious. I know you sit with a lot of clients. You sit with a lot of stories. And what would you say to some people? You know, I know you have so many men and women that come who are just like knee deep in the grief process. And we are very good in our organization of engaging and holding grief. This is like what we do. Like we're like not afraid of it, right? But I think a lot of people want to know, like, am I going to be here forever? Like, now we always say you're always grieving something, you know, like get very comfortable with it because that's the way of the world. But we also want to know that we're Sunday people, that we are resurrection people, that forgiveness is part of the release. And what would you offer to those clients or to the people that are listening who are on the beginning, or they're touching on their death of Friday, or they're sitting on their Saturday and Sunday hasn't come yet, resurrection is not there. And I know you've not arrived either, neither have I, but you have tasted something of Sunday many times throughout the course of the past 5 years. What kind of encouragement would you give them? That's just, you know, yeah, keep going. But like, yeah, I don't know. What comes to mind when you think of, you know, even you a few years ago where it was like, oh my gosh, I just want to leave. I just want to give up, you know, just forget it. What would you want to say to someone who's listening going, I'm not there yet, but will I ever get there?
Right. Yeah, what comes to mind, I think a part of my calling is to give permission to humanity, and allow people to know you get to be here for however long you need to be here. We don't want you to stay there. And I think it is the desire of the Lord to not keep us there, and he won't. But first, I want to applaud the courage to even lean into what grief has even been. I think that's the scariest part almost to enter into. For me, the hardest part felt forgiving. I was happy to stay angry, except that it was ruining my life, but it felt good towards the person, you know, externally. I'm like, I don't like you. I want to, you know, stay mad at you, for good reason. And then internally, you know, the delight in me, that I wanted so badly to live. It was worth, I think, moving towards more grief, which is what you're saying, you know, some of these people might find themselves in. And I think the thing I want them to know is that when you can enter into your sorrow, your disappointment, your anger, your rage, even when it's uncomfortable, it is going to be the thing that releases you towards compassion. And compassion, I've noticed, you know, having clients, that it's so hard because so often we can look back at where did this thing come from, and we see these versions of ourselves and we don't like them. In fact, we probably hate them or disgusted by them. And that is usually one of the hardest places to come back to saying, can we look at him, her for a little bit and see what was going on with this version of you, and what's the compassion we can offer? And sometimes people stay there for a while because it is really hard to offer that compassion, which then opens our hearts to receive the compassion from the Lord, to then move towards compassion, you know, for others that sends us towards forgiveness. And I think the more honestly and the more permission you give yourself to sit in the reality of the grief, of the pain, of the heartache, that is going to be the thing that moves you forward. I don't know. I think in my journey and my experience, especially with the Lord, he doesn't leave us there. He can't. You know, I think in community was the biggest thing. Having community and support where I was grieving in that messy space was everything. Without that, I don't think I could have moved forward.
Right. Well, your brain needed a different story to match the story that it was already experiencing, and it needed a different outcome. And this is, I love that you said, when we can begin to offer compassion to the younger parts of us, or the parts of us that are grieving, when we can begin to step into that, it is going to shift us And then we can eventually offer it to others. But it really does, from what I hear you saying, it has to start with us. It has to start with offering that compassion. And that might be a while, even getting to there, because we turn on ourselves. I must be the one. I should have said this. I shouldn't have worn this. I should have not been there, whatever. Like, if I could have just done something different, then things would have been different. And so we have turned on ourselves. But once we start sitting in those stories, especially when it's being bared witness to by someone else who can actually say, hold on, wait a minute. You were 7. What was your option? Whatever. It does open up this sense of compassion, and that compassion, it will always drive you towards places of freedom and goodness. It will. That's so well said, Abby. Gosh, it's fun having you on the podcast. You did so good. And it was so lovely having you on here. Thanks for just sharing so candidly, and thanks for sharing and sitting with those that are hurting. If people want to work with you, Abby, how would they get in touch with you? How would they find you?
Yeah, you can find me on our Freedom Movement website. So we are fm.org under support, and then you can find me under coaching.
Yes, and you'll see Abby's beautiful face there. And once in a while, she's on Instagram too, so you can go check her out. Sometimes she gets in spurts. She goes in spurts, Instagram spurts. I'm like, Abby's on a spurt this week. And then we'll get some really good nuggets, and then we don't see you for a month. But you're busy doing really good work with people. So Abby Call, everyone, Call. You can go check her out. Yes, go on our website. We'll put all the links on there. Abby, thank you for the hard work you have done, so that there's nothing you're asking someone, inviting someone into that you haven't been willing to do yourself. Absolutely. And I can say, as someone who is your friend, who's been, your boss and your friend and your leader and your, someone who's gotten the opportunity and blessing and honor to shepherd you, you really are living out everything you're saying. There is nothing that you're talking about on here that you have known in theory and not in practice. You still get work for your own heart done. On the regular, you are still in good care for your own story. You have not stopped. This is so integral. So anyone that sits with you, I know, is getting a woman that, yes, is flawed, of course, but the integrity says, I will continue to do this work because you are in it with us. And that is far and few between. So thank you. And I love you so, so much.
Yeah. Thanks, Karrie.
All right. We'll see you guys next week. We are so thankful for the talented Tanya Godsey offering her amazing music with us. You can find Tanya on Spotify and other streaming platforms. And as always, thank you for letting us share about the not so easy stories that make us, and entering into the honesty and courage it takes to love who you were created to be. So until the next time, friends, may God's love and kindness be an offering to your heart, both now and always.